If I had known her tears were rehearsed, maybe I could have saved myself sooner. But then again, maybe I didn't want to know. Hey everyone, if you like stories about relationships, betrayal, and finding your strength when everything falls apart, hit that subscribe button and support the channel. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. I still remember the exact moment when therapy became a part of our marriage. We were sitting at our kitchen island, the granite one I'd installed myself the summer before, eating takeout because neither of us had the energy to cook. 6 years of marriage, and somehow we'd become these polite strangers sharing a mortgage. I think we should see someone, Eliza said, pushing her pad thai around with her fork. Not looking at me, just staring at her food like it might have answers. I remember feeling this wave of relief. Like finally, we were acknowledging that something was broken. That weird heaviness that had been sitting on my chest for months suddenly felt lighter. Yeah, I said, I think that's a good idea. God, I was so naive. I actually thought we were taking a step toward fixing things. The therapist's office was in one of those renovated Victorian houses downtown. Dr. Neil Kaplan. His waiting room had these uncomfortable mid-century chairs and plants that looked too perfect to be real. The kind of place that's trying really hard to make you feel calm, but somehow does the opposite. From that first session, I noticed something off. Eliza, who could barely talk to me about what she wanted for dinner, suddenly had this emotional vocabulary I'd never seen before. She'd cry at exactly the right moments. She'd use phrases that sounded like they came straight from a self-help book. I'm learning to honor my truth while creating space for yours, she'd say, reaching for my hand in front of Dr. Kaplan. And I'd think, who even talks like that? But then I'd feel guilty for being suspicious. Wasn't this what we wanted? Her opening up? Maybe the problem was me. Maybe I was the one who couldn't accept vulnerability when I saw it. So I leaned in. I really did. I started sharing things I'd never said out loud before. How I felt like a failure after my dad died because I couldn't keep his construction business afloat. How sometimes I was afraid I'd inherited his depression along with his toolbox. How I worried that Eliza had married a version of me that no longer existed. Week after week, I'd leave those sessions feeling raw, exposed, like I'd peeled back my skin in front of two people, one of whom was practically a stranger. But Eliza, she'd walk out of there looking lighter, refreshed almost. Like these sessions that left me emotionally hungover were somehow energizing for her. Dr. Kaplan really gets it, she'd say on the drive home. I feel like we're making real progress. And I'd nod because I wanted to believe it too. 3 months in, things at home started to change, but not in the way I expected. Eliza was suddenly working late more often. Her phone would ding with notifications, and she'd snatch it up like it was on fire. She bought new underwear, started wearing perfume on random Tuesdays. If this were a movie, I'd have connected the dots immediately. But when you're in it, when it's your life, your marriage, you have this amazing ability to blind yourself to the obvious. Instead, I doubled down on therapy. I thought if I just worked harder, shared more, peeled back more layers, we'd find our way back to each other. Well, I feel like I'm the only one really trying here, I said during our 4th month of sessions. It was the first time I'd voiced any criticism of the process. Dr. Kaplan leaned forward in his ergonomic chair. That's an interesting perspective, David. Do you think that might be a pattern for you? Taking on responsibility for other people's happiness? And Eliza, right on cue, started to cry. Not the ugly, snotty kind of crying that happens when you're genuinely upset. The kind that leaves mascara artfully smudged under your eyes. I'm trying so hard, she whispered. Sometimes I feel like nothing I do is ever enough for you. In that moment, watching Dr. Kaplan hand her a tissue, watching him nod sympathetically, I felt crazy. Like I was living in some alternate reality where I was the villain in my own marriage. Maybe you're right, I said. Maybe it is me. After that session, Dr. Kaplan suggested we try something new. Individual sessions in addition to our couples work. To give you both space to process on your own, he explained. Eliza agreed immediately. too quickly, looking back. My first individual session was awkward. I felt like I was betraying Eliza by being there alone, even though it had been the therapist's idea. Tell me about your father, Dr. Kaplan said, his notebook balanced on his knee. So I did. I told him about Dad's struggle with depression, how he'd hide it behind hard work and harder drinking, how I'd found him in the garage when I was 17. Dr. Kaplan took notes the entire time, his pen scratching against paper like a metronome. And how does your relationship with your father affect your expectations of Eliza? He asked. The question caught me off guard. I don't think it does. Everyone's past shapes their present, David. Your fear of abandonment from losing your father might make you overly dependent on Eliza's emotional validation. It sounded reasonable when he said it like that. Clinical, like he'd identified a glitch in my programming that could be fixed with the right code. I left that session feeling worse than I'd ever felt after therapy, like I was fundamentally broken in ways I hadn't even realized. The next day was a Wednesday. Eliza's individual session was scheduled for 7 p.m. She'd been going to these late appointments for a few weeks, claiming it was the only time that worked with Dr. Kaplan's schedule. I was supposed to be at a job site until 9, overseeing some electrical work on a renovation I was managing. But we finished early, and I decided to surprise Eliza. Maybe grab dinner together after her session, try to reconnect. I pulled into the parking lot at 8:15, figuring I'd wait in the car until she was done. The Victorian house was lit up from within, warm light spilling from the windows. Most of the offices were dark. Apparently, Dr. Kaplan was the only therapist who worked this late. At 8:30, I got out of the car, thinking maybe I'd just peek through the window, see if they were wrapping up. I'm not proud of that impulse, but something felt wrong, had felt wrong for weeks. The blinds in Dr. Kaplan's office were mostly closed, but there was a gap, just enough to see inside. And what I saw wasn't therapy. Eliza was sitting on his desk, her skirt pushed up around her waist. Dr. Kaplan was standing between her legs, his hands in her hair. They were kissing like they might die if they stopped. It's a strange thing, watching your life explode in slow motion. I felt it first in my stomach, this cold, twisting sensation. Then in my chest, like someone had reached in and squeezed my lungs. Then, finally, in my head, a roaring sound like I was underwater. I didn't confront them. I know that's what people expect, the dramatic showdown, the shouting, the accusations. But I just walked back to my car, sat there for a minute, then drove home. When Eliza came home an hour later, her hair freshly combed, smelling of the perfume she'd started wearing on Tuesdays, I was sitting at the kitchen island, the same place where 5 months earlier she'd suggested therapy. "How was your session?" I asked. She set her purse down, poured herself a glass of water. "Good. Productive. Neil, Dr. Kaplan, thinks I've been making real progress with my communication issues." "That's great," I said. My voice sounded normal. How was my voice so normal? "And the physical stuff? Is that helping too?" She froze, glass halfway to her lips. "What?" "The physical stuff," I repeated. "You know, the kissing, the part where your therapist had his tongue down your throat. Is that standard treatment? Or do you get charged extra for that?" The glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the tile floor. Neither of us moved to clean it up. "David, I can explain." "How long?" I asked. She stared at me, calculating. I could almost see her running through scenarios, trying to figure out which lie would do the least damage. "How long?" I repeated. 3 months, she whispered. Almost from the beginning then. While I'd been exposing my deepest insecurities, they'd been laughing at me, planning their little rendezvous, using my trauma as foreplay. "Did you ever actually want to fix our marriage?" I asked. "Or was therapy just a convenient cover?" Eliza's face crumpled. The tears came, the real ones this time, messy and desperate. "I did. At first I really did. But then, things with Neil just happened." "Things don't just happen, Eliza. You choose them. You chose this. Both of you." I stood up, careful to avoid the broken glass. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 6 years, wanted to comfort her, to wipe away her tears and tell her we could figure it out. But a stronger part knew that this betrayal went beyond just an affair. They'd made me doubt my own sanity, my own perceptions. They'd used my vulnerability as a weapon against me. "I'm going to stay at Mark's tonight," I said, referring to my business partner. "When I come back tomorrow, I want you gone." "David, please. And you can tell Dr. Kaplan he'll be hearing from the state licensing board." I packed a bag while she sobbed in the kitchen. As I walked out the door, I realized I felt something unexpected. Relief. Like I could finally trust my own perceptions again. The next few months were hard. Divorce is never easy, especially when it comes with public humiliation. Dr. Kaplan lost his license after I filed a complaint and discovered I wasn't his first special patient. Eliza moved in with her sister in Oregon, last I heard. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Once you're there, you can finally see which parts of your life were real and which were illusion. Those individual therapy sessions with Dr. Kaplan, they were manipulation, designed to make me more insecure, more dependent. But the issues we discussed were real. My grief over Dad, my fear of not being enough. So 6 months after my marriage imploded, I found a new therapist. A real one this time. And I started the actual work of healing. It's been 2 years now. I still have trust issues. Show me someone who wouldn't after what happened. But I'm learning to trust myself again, and that's the foundation for everything else. Sometimes I think about Eliza and Dr. Kaplan, about the elaborate performance they staged at my expense. But mostly, I think about that moment in the car, after I saw them together. How even in my shock and pain, some deeper part of me felt free. Like finally, the world made sense again. If there's a lesson in all of this, and I'm not sure there has to be, it's that sometimes the most painful truths are better than the most comforting lies. And that's your gut, that voice inside you that whispers, "Something isn't right here." Listen to it. I wish I had sooner. So that's my story. If it resonated with you, or if you've been through something similar, drop a comment below. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories like this one. And remember, it's okay to walk away from people who make you question your reality. Sometimes that's the only way to find yourself again. And thank you for listening.